Well, hello and welcome to another Sunday morning coffee with Dr. Childress. So today I'm going to be talking about a media information page that I've posted to my consulting website. The goal is to draw a lot of media attention to the family court issues and the problems, particularly around forensic custody evaluations and the failure of licensing boards to hold forensic custody evaluators accountable to any ethical standards, thus driving the quality of professional services in the family courts to the absolute lowest level possible. So that's what this information website is designed for, is for the media to come and get sort of a one-stop shopping on the most pertinent information related to that. And let me just say right off the top, one of the features of this pathology, it's the transgenerational transmission of trauma and likely sex abuse trauma for a variety of reasons. And one of the features of sex abuse is that it isolates its victim from reporting and rescue. That's a classic feature of sex abuse, to isolate the victim from reporting and rescue. Well, that's exactly what's happened to you parents and children in the family courts. You've been isolated from reporting to the licensing boards or to any authorities out there about the what's happening to you, and you're isolated from rescue. You're given to these forensic custody evaluators who are doing this experimental role and experimental procedure on you. It's a quasi-judicial role for doctors is an experimental role. Forensic custody evaluations are an experimental assessment, and they're just doing this experiment on you. Absolute failure, awful, 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 without IRB approval, without risk-benefit analysis, without special protection. It's just a bad situation, and they're allowed to do it for some unknown reason. And so that's what's isolated you. You don't get the same quality of services as they get with ADHD or autism or eating disorder. Nope, not you. You don't get a diagnostic assessment and treatment, and your doctors aren't held accountable for an accurate diagnosis and effective treatment because they do something different. They're quasi-judicial assistants to the court in deciding on custody. No, we got to go back to diagnosis and treatment. And that's one of the major focal points of this current effort, is to eliminate forensic custody evaluations from the family courts because they are dangerous. New York Blue Ribbon Commission of Forensic Custody Evaluations. They are dangerous, harmful to children, lack scientific and legal value, produce defective reports with potentially disastrous consequences for parents and children. We know that. I review them as a second opinion within the legal system. I am in 100% agreement. New York Blue Ribbon Commission voted 11-9 to entirely eliminate them. I am in absolute full agreement with that. We need to get them out, conduct an IRB review if you want. They'll never pass. But we need to get them off because they are dangerous and harmful to children. So where are the licensing boards? Interesting question. So that's what this whole case or this matter is about, is I am discharging my duty to protect obligations to the licensing board. And this is an opportunity to get the media over here and focused on this issue. And there's a lot of angles to run on this. Oh my goodness, just 1,000. Institutional corruption, David and Goliath kind of thing. Use of AI in the family courts. There's a lot of angles for the media to get over here. But what that will do is it will break your isolation. It isolates you from reporting and rescue. Well, now I've gotten a vehicle to be able to express your voice. Your voice can now be heard because it's being shut down by the licensing boards on the front end. They don't review forensic custody about the quasi-judicial immunity or release of information. You don't get reviews by the board, so they can do whatever they want. And And so their ethics, they don't care about competence. They don't care about anything. You're their cash cow, essentially. So let's get the media over here and break that isolation and that silence. So here's what's up on that media information site. First, I start with AI in the family courts because I'm using AI in the family courts. I think it's going to be extraordinarily helpful in the family courts. It's ethically contained and professionally trained and supervised. So it's not just a wild AI like you guys have. It's I use it within my practice for document review. And guess what? The AI is going to hold all the mental health people accountable. If they generate a report or a custody evaluation, it's going to get an AI review and for your ethical standards and quality of practice. However, this is just a sort of a hook. And let me say something about this. This is the a clear hook. Okay, you can go over to media, to tech journals, and that kind of thing. The integration of AI into like a high stakes situation of the family courts. There's a lot of angles and stories on that, and so you can just get the media over to me on that, and then I'll put them right onto the institutional corruption and all the nasty little hidden places of forensic psychology. So, but this is a clear one that I think we can generate a lot of media attention for. And what I put up there is my Substack. So I have a lot of essays now up on my Substack about AI psychology, about AI in the family courts, and about how to ethically contain your AI plus some others. And I'll be continuing to expand that Substack location. So you can bring over media, and it's up to you. Contact your local media, the little papers. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be CNN, although it could be. But what happens in media is you get one story, and then the other reporters see that story, and they start building on the story. So whoever it is, wherever, it doesn't really matter. I would suggest you work with AI on it. Grab a Chat GPT or a Gemini and ethically contain it. I recommend, but well, go to my Substack. I'll tell you how to do that. But then ask it and talk about the situation and say who would be relevant media, who would be interested in the family court corruption or in the AI in the family courts kind of situation, and it'll give you some wonderful suggestions. So now, if I go out and contact them, there's going to be a little self-serving on a lot of ways, but I'll do that. But holy cow, you guys are in a great position to do that. To call that attention, get them over here, and it's a wonderful story, human interest story about the psychologist using AI in the family courts, and you got your stories of tragedy, and we got the bad guy, the heel of the forensic custody evaluator. So it has all the necessary ingredients for a good story, and that's what the media likes, a good story. ProPublica, I think, would be a good location for that. So that's the first piece on that. But then you scroll down, and the next one is about harm of forensic custody evaluations, and this is where the rest of the page is going to be focused on. So it begins with that there's an unmonitored, unreviewed, unregulated experiment on parents and children in the family courts. Okay, and that's the New York Blue Ribbon Commission. Okay, right there, the quote, they're defective reports, potentially disastrous consequences for parents and children, elimination of forensic custody evaluations entirely, harmful to children, lack scientific and legal value, dangerous. That's what they say. The review of this says so why is this dangerous practice by psychologists that's harmful to children, lacks scientific and legal value, and that's creating potentially disastrous consequences for parents and children allowed to happen? Where are the licensing boards saying, no, this needs to stop? Until we get proper protections in, until we get a risk-benefit analysis, we need to go back to diagnosis and treatment, what doctors do, and stop giving these doctors quasi-judicial immunity for incompetent practice. No, we need competent practice. Your children need it, your parents need it, just like everywhere else in psychology. So that's the opening section. The next section is, oops, there we go, is about incompetence and unethical malpractice. So in this one, I took a course, an 8-module course from the Association Family Conciliation Courts, AFCC. 6 top forensic psychologists, using the top loosely. 6 of the top prominent forensic psychologists taught this 8-module course across 4 days. Well, it activated my standard 1.04 obligations because I believe there was an ethical violation by another psychologist, by all 6 of them. 2.04 bases for scientific and professional knowledge, use of just standard established knowledge as a basis for judgments. 9.01, 2.01, oh my goodness, 2.01, boundaries of competence. They're not competent in the multiple necessary domains. And 3.04, avoiding harm. So I wrote them pursuant to my obligation, 1.04. I wrote them a notification, an informal notification to all 6 of them, saying, here's my concerns from the class. They then wrote me a letter or an email back, and that's their response to my, put the 2 of them together. Get your media to look at my concerns to the 6 top forensic psychologists and look at their response. 1 page, they just totally blow it off and say, nope, stonewalling, absolutely stonewalling to all of the significant ethical concerns, dangerous, harmful to children. They're just nothing. And so those 2 documents are substantially revealing. But then because of that, I then incurred obligations under 1.05 to take further action appropriate to the situation, and it offers some suggestions. It says standard 1.05 to file with a national ethics committee, to notify appropriate institutional authorities, or file a board complaint. So I went to the APA ethics committee and sent them a notification pursuant to 1.05 regarding my ethical concerns for these 6 prominent forensic psychologists and this AFCC course. And then I also notified the board of directors, a separate kind of document where I notified the AFCC board of directors, an appropriate institutional authority, about the ethical concerns surrounding a course they are sponsoring. Okay, so there's your documents, documenting the institutional players into the situation. Then, next section down, I have an AI analysis of forensic custody evaluations. So this is a chat dialogue, a chat, okay, with a GPT-4 regarding forensic custody evaluations. We just walk it through. What's the history of them, the ethical violations, the Belmont report violations, everything. We just walk it through. Now, you can download that. It's a PDF, and you can upload it into any AI you want. Now, again, I recommend you ethically contain your AI within the APA ethics code. It stabilizes them and they stop running out to the general internet for things. But then you can discuss it, which is what I did for Gemini, the second one. I took that discussion on forensic custody evaluations, I uploaded it to the Gemini, and we discussed institutional liability. Okay, so first I asked, is this analysis accurate? And the Gemini said, yep, based on everything I'm looking at here, the analysis is accurate. Then I said, what are the liability issues involved? And focusing on licensing boards, but it gave me everything. You told me the liability for the APA, the AFCC, and the licensing boards, and even brought up potential class action lawsuits. So there's all sorts of liability concerns right now and conflict of interest concerns. These are AI. This is not Dr. Childress. So you can get these, a media rep can get these, they can read it, there's all your documented evidence. okay, is these two AI chat dialogues. Then I'm closing the media website with a veto review of those 6 forensic custody evaluators, because now I filed a licensing board complaint against them pursuant to 1.05's instructions and the response of the APA Ethics Committee, who said, we're not going to look at this unless you file a licensing board complaint. So basically, they instructed me to file board complaints against them. So I have, and those are currently active. As part of that complaint, I did a veto review of all 6 top or prominent forensic custody evaluators: Dr. Joyce, Droid, Sullivan, Moran, Klein Pruitt, Dr. Ward. Okay, so all of them, and I've got them up there. So you can go look at Dr. Deutsch's Vita, and then I have my boxes on the analysis, and we'll just walk you through that. And then below that is this Vita analysis summary. So it's just the summary that came off of that. So I have the full Vita analysis, starting with the summary and then going line by line through it. And then also the nice summary of what. Guess what the summary is? Based on a Vita review of 6 of the most prominent forensic custody evaluators who are promoting themselves as an advanced course in family law and this made-up pathology that they're proposing, parent-child contact problems. Let me tell you about that. There is no pathology unique to the family courts that doesn't exist within the general population. So there's no such thing as parental alienation, resist, refuse, dynamic, or parent-child contact problems. Those are made-up pathologies that supposedly exist only in the family courts and nowhere else and need a special set of diagnosis criteria. No, they don't. If I can explain the pathology using established knowledge, it's not a new pathology they're discovering. They're just ignorant. They lack knowledge and information. Google ignorant, lacking knowledge or information. They're ignorant about actual things, actual knowledge, attachment, family systems, delusional thought disorders, personality pathology, child abuse and complex trauma. They know none of it. And as a result, they apply none of it. And they have to make up stuff because they don't know anything. That's the Vita analysis there. I go through it, and it's frightening when you actually look at how insubstantial their entire work experience is focused in the family courts, and their education is minimal. They do not have competence in the attachment system and attachment pathology when they're working with a child rejecting a parent and attachment pathology. They're not competent in delusional thought disorders when that's the differential diagnosis is actual child abuse by the targeted parent or delusional persecutory delusion by the allied parent. There's your path A, path B analysis, and they're not even competent in delusional thought disorders. They're not competent in personality disorders. They're not competent in child abuse and complex trauma. They're not competent in family systems. None of it. Okay. You can look. Okay. And all 6 of them. And these are your best forensic psychologists. Imagine what everybody else is practicing like. If your New York Blue Ribbon Commission, we need to eliminate forensic custody evaluations entirely from the family courts. And this is what this whole situation is focused on. So let's get the media attention on this situation, on my case, on the whole situation. And let's get some stories generated about what's happening in the family courts and the solutions for the family courts. What do we do? A return to established knowledge, a return to ethical standards, a return to competence, a return to diagnosis and treatment, an accurate diagnosis and effective treatment to fix the problem. Not custody evaluations. That's a misguided approach from day one. It was misguided, and it's created 40 years of destruction. I've been here for 15 years. You parents know your lives were destroyed by it, maybe even currently being destroyed by this broken mental health system that you're being forced to endure. So let's get the media on this. Let's break your isolation, so that we can get some real change, effective change, and start protecting your children from child abuse. So it's up. This whole thing, this web page is up on my consulting website. Simple little drchildressconsulting.com. And then if you click any, there's several categories: parents, mental health professionals, attorneys. You click any one of those, it will show up as like the first one up there: media, press, information, and then you go to that, and you'll get all the other supporting information to that. So there, you've got a location you can direct people to. You've got lots of media, and you got lots of hooks, lots of storylines you can be starting to share out there. It is time for you, the parents who have suffered so much, who've been financially devastated and abused and exploited by everyone you've contacted, the attorneys, the mental health people, just all the professionals, and just had your child's life destroyed and your life destroyed by this incompetent mental health services in the family courts. It's time for you to speak up. Now, these custody evaluators get quasi-judicial immunity for when they're court appointed. So you can't. I've been watching, 15 years. You try to file a board complaint, the board just kicks it out and said, nope, we don't review that because they get quasi-judicial immunity. They're exempted from competence. They're exempted from ethical practice because they get quasi-judicial immunity. Why? Because they gave it to themselves when they created the role. They said, oh, this is going to be dangerous, so I'm working for the courts, so you can't, I'm immune from ethical standards. And, oh, man, it's just a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And it requires that in order for the board to review the custody evaluation, it has to get release of information signed by both parents. Well, the pathological parent doesn't sign that. So none of these custody evaluations ever get reviewed by the licensing board for quasi-judicial immunity and can't get released. So guess who gets to review them? Me, because I'm in the legal system doing second opinion review. So I'm within the legal system challenging the evidence. So I get to review them. And I review them line by line. I know exactly what they are in the United States, in Canada, and internationally, over in Great Britain and Australia. I have seen and read these custody evaluations. They are the worst thing imaginable, but they never get reviewed. There's no accountability. They can just do whatever they want, $10,000 to $40,000, 6 to 9 months. You're their cash cow. It's financial exploitation, pure and simple. And the whole system is inverted, where the licensing boards who should be protecting you are protecting the incompetent forensic psychologists from accountability for destroying your lives because of their incompetence. That's an inverted system. The licensing boards are supposed to be protecting the citizens of the state, not the incompetent psychologists. We need to get a focus on this, and one of that pieces of that is the get media over here. Now, in addition, there's a couple of legislative committees that is the next, also an additional focus: the Judiciary Committee and then the Oversight Committee for the licensing boards. Separate talk. This one is just about the forensic or about the media page. So with that, I'm going to head off to my Sunday and get back into a lot more work. So we will talk with you later. If you don't stand up now, shame on you. Just shame on you. And if you've had, it does not just current parents, past parents. You've had this. So everybody in the last 10, 15, 20 years who's had their lives destroyed within the family courts, who's seen their child taken and destroyed by the family court system, now's the time to get a hold of the media and send them over to this webpage, get them in contact with me, and we'll get the reforms necessary that we will stop this for all children and all parents everywhere on the planet. Because if California undertakes the necessary reforms, then that's going to move to the United States, and it's going to move to Canada, and it's going to move to Great Britain and Australia and the Netherlands, and it's just going to start expanding out Germany and elsewhere, Sweden. And so it'll start expanding once the reforms get in place. And that part of that is because of that Google Gemini institutional liability. Okay, that once the reforms are made, that opens up the boards, all 50 state licensing boards, and the APA and the AFCC to liability for not protecting, not doing anything prior to that. If they don't do the reforms, that opens up to even more liability, given that they've got Dr. Childress and the New York Blue Ribbon Commission, two different vectors coming into them, exposing the awful, unethical, harmful practices of forensic, and they don't do anything about it. There's your legal liability on that. But if they change it, then they're still kind of admitting that they allowed it for 40 years here. And so either way, they're kind of stuck, which puts them in a conflict of interest situation. But the other feature is if some do it and some don't, and Google Gemini talks about that, that's just even more of a nightmare for them. And that's when it brought up the idea of a class action lawsuit. And I think that's absolutely, and I'm not an attorney, I'm a psychologist, but I've watched Aaron Brockovich, and it seems like it's a reasonable kind of situation. You are a defined class of people who get a special quality of service, awful, and no review and everything because of what? Because it's a problem. And all 50 state licensing boards would be defendants. That's called deep pockets, and the APA and the AFCC and all the forensic custody evaluators on the court lists. Those are deep pockets, and that's your malpractice insurance companies. So a settlement out of that, I think that's interesting. Okay, that might captivate an attorney working on contingency on a class action for this. I'm not an attorney. You can go figure that out. But what all of this also is documentation for that. Okay, I've got 15 years of documentation. I went to the AFCC and National Convention. I told them. I notified the APA, petitioned to the APA. I told them. Okay, so they're on notice. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens with everything. First things first. Let's break the isolation. Let's get the necessary focus and reforms that we need. Let's get some special committees of task forces to look at the situation in the family courts and come up with solutions. And there are solutions, easy peasy solutions, diagnosis and treatment, second opinion on that through telehealth, easy peasy solutions here. Once we break the ownership of you from the forensic psychologist. So with that, I'm headed off to my Sunday, and we'll check in and talk with you all next Sunday.